So I don't play MMOs, and it's not like I have some physical regression against them, whatever the word is English. I mean, I don't play FPSs, first person shooters, or like, uh, because I get computer sickness. There was one I liked, mm, Requiem Avenging Angels. I absolutely love it even today. It has a good balance between difficulty and ammo preservation, and you get a bunch of extra abilities. You play an angel, so that's why you get spells, you can possess enemies, and you just use, you know, cause damage without consuming ammo and that kind of stuff. But it also worth using the weapons. Anyway, yeah, I also had less problem when I was younger. Like, I played Doom obsessively, and before that I played the Wolfenstein 3D. But that's not what I want to talk about here. I want to talk about why I don't like, why I don't play MMOs. I wish I could, but you see, I'm a completionist. That means I like to play games to 100%. MMOs are not like that. They are like offering infinite gameplay time. And sometimes I would like that. That's why I'm collecting the hundreds of games, because I like every genre. I just want to find the game that fits me. Now, back to MMOs. What? Start with the basic, like Diablo. I mean, Diablo 2. I hated that game because you, in single player, you just won't get the gear. Even there are some builds that require heavy investment of gears that you can find only on higher level. Not just higher, but high level. But if you are at that point, why even bother? And you have to get to that point. And I had a fire mage who used bows to deal damage. Um, and if that was not an option because of immunity, there was one that caused lightning damage. Anyway, I grinded for a whole season. I don't know how long Diablo 2 seasons were, but it took a substantial amount of time, 6 to 18 months. I grinded to get the one item that was only available in leather, and when the season expired and the character went non-leather, then I could still build toward my end goal. And then, uh, I was playing and it was fun, but leveling and finding items, it can get boring. So sometimes I went and pulled up low-level characters to, just pass the obstacles of the games. So I unlock new areas and difficulty levels, whatever. And the guy I last carried over killed me. The PvP in that game worked that even only one side declared hostility, then both of you could damage the other. Why was it that way? I don't know. And I played on hardcore, so if your character died even once, you were dead. That character got deleted. And I stepped out of the town, And the guy stepped out too, or girl, I don't know, and just killed me. I never even turned back the game. I sold my disc. I said, this is so massive design failure, I no longer care. I spent playing that for years, by the way. And just for that, I instantly got rid of it. Now, there was another where the economy of the game was based on PvP. You got barely any resources fighting monsters, PvE. So you had to start a PvP, and when you found someone who you could take their money, you repeatedly attacked it to take all of their resources. And it was not you get resources and the other is just saying that I got defeated, who cares? He lost the resources. Obviously, the player base cannibalized itself, so that game died. Very obviously, like in weeks. Now, there was another game I played. It had a tagline that keep attacking the enemy, we'll run out of bullets, or something like that. And there, to get the resources, you had to participate in. You could get minimal resources participating in daily maze runs, but the real money came if you got a high enough level and invested in stocks, which was fictional currency within the game, and you didn't buy it for real monies, but that was inaccessible and confusing, and it's just, what? And the game got very repetitive after like a month, so I abandoned it. Now, there was. I should have made notes before, but whatever. So, there was this game where you could actually do everything. Because, most of the MMOs, when it's not an idle game. The idle game is when the game plays itself for you and you just regularly have to check in, spend all the gathered resources, and the game fastens itself up. And there is, of course, a ladder, and you can compare your progress to others. Very boring concept, and as far as I can tell, it faded out of existence. Now, the other games, most of the MMOs I met, makes you want to participate in every part of the game, and you actually demanded to progress, to participate in every part of the game, but you get a certain amount of actions or resources, to activate the features, and you simply cannot participate in everything. So you are just locked out of progress without paying actual real world money. And that's where 90% I just quit. And that's like the main reason I no longer even get interested in MMOs. And especially if it is an FPS first person shooter MMO, especially these arena wars, I have to mention I got a video game magazine, Quake, the first one. And I got through the tutorial era, and right after that, you get the first real enemies. It was you are wandering on an alien planet, and some predator-like things starting to shout at you because they are aliens and therefore evil. And you fight them in very enclosed areas, and they are saltoing through the screen. I was like, what the fuck I'm supposed to do? I had no Korean reflexes at all, and I got used to Doom. There stand the enemies, you shoot it shoots back, it has way less HP or health, or your weapons are better, and you start a fight because you have range or something, and that's why you win. In Quake, you just you had to follow the salto mortale enemies. So in last ditch attempt, I tried to shoot rockets because that had area of effect, and kaboom. But we were fighting in enclosed spaces, so my own explosions hit me too and killed me. So I just gave up. That's the other reason why I am not even interested in first-person shooters. These arena fighters and all that kind of stuff. Now, what was I talking about? I don't really have an idea, but there was this Arctics Entertainment. Yeah, they offered you pay one-time fee and you get access to the whole game, and not just like 3 classes out of everything. More interesting was locked behind the paywall, but otherwise you could still buy stuff, but they had this policy in the user agreement that the paid content, items, equipment can never be the best. Of course, eventually they went there, and it always became the best for a week or two, but that still gives the advantage and annoyance to the others. And they kept cutting out the old quests, and they did something even more hilarious. I will just like this Facebook game, when Flash games were still big and Facebook had an abundance of them. And I won't even mention where you shot bubbles to make bubbles fall, because if you shot the bubble and 3 or more bubbles connected and the bubbles disappeared and there was no more connections to a bunch of bubbles, they all fell down. That game was fun for a while, but after a while you definitely had to use special resources, which you only got very limited ones, and absolutely limited, and you couldn't progress without them after a while. But if you had access in an infinite amount, like before the whole Flash game era died out, before that, for like a year, they gave you like daily amount of these until the last like a couple of months where they took it back, and the player base just died. And I did great progress, but I hated that this works like that way. And I was very lucky, by the way, because the extra resources you get came when I got to the point that I was questioning, does it worth still trying to play this one? Now the other one I want to play with, I want to mention is there was this Farmville clone. You planted vegetables, seriously just vegetables, and it was just like that. But your farmer was actually a zombie. Why a zombie? Because edgy content, obviously. Farmville was mostly for women, and with the player being a zombie that catered more to the male audience, I guess. I bet it did. And I actually managed to plant everything, develop every house and every structure, and I had gathered enough special resources, which usually you got for paying real money, to get a special skin for my zombie. And it was very fun. I was like, yeah, I got everything, I won. Seriously, I felt I won. I got to the end of the game. And they started to put another game on top of the existing game, where you had to fish certain resources, which was very random and very low percentage to find. It was kinda loot box, but not really. And build stuff, new stuff, and expand your whole thing. But if you wanted to do it for free, these were for free models. So I know people paid money, but I was very efficient with this, planning ahead. Like there was on tablet, I played a dragon breeding game. It was just you put down an egg, it hatches to a dragon. Uh, there was always a chance that it will be a special dragon. It's usually one egg could hatch into 2 or 3 kinds of dragon, and if you planted 2 eggs to each other, then both gave you, they were parents, and you could breed new kinds of dragons. And it was nice, and it's a very casual game, and it really didn't need any kind of real life resources invested in it. And it was like 5 minutes a day. You just took out the dragons you already had, put down the eggs, the new eggs. You went on with your life. And it went into infinity, and it was so many dragons, the RAM of the tablet couldn't handle it anymore, so I had to give up. I wasn't fed up with it or anything, nothing limited my progress, but I had to give up because my RAM couldn't handle it anymore. And actually I got recognition from the player base because I was progressing that well. So this Facebook farming game to build all a new game of top of the old game uh, you had to produce a bunch of yellow paint. That was an in-game resource. You just sow some seed that breeded some yellow plants, and you made yellow paint out of it. And it was excessive. Like, to one of the new resources, you had to make like 200 yellow paint. And to make you understand, these yellow flowers took bunch of space, and they needed constant care because they grew like in 5 minutes. So you had to make this 200 paint just for one resource, which you needed 50 to 1,000. You had to sit at your computer constantly doing just red paint for like an hour to get your how many yellow flower to make one yellow paint. And it was literally a new game on top of the old game. You were expected to pay for the yellow paint. So I said, fuck you. And I stood up and left. So, and there was this other game. This will be the last time we talk about it. It was a fantasy game. It was card based, but the cards actually turned into characters, and you played with them on a turn based system. Pretty much like Final Fantasy. But you also still kept cards to choose what actions they do. And the final thing was you could do a whole bunch of things, and it was fun. Of course, there was a trading, and you could buy cards for real money. Now, the bad part was, the limiting part was that you got to you had to participate eventually, even if you didn't want to, in cooperating the players' battles. So a bunch of players had to participate to fight stronger monsters. But to win those levels, you needed exact strategies. Exact strategies meant exact and, of course, expensive rare cards. And you no longer could come up with your own strategies, but meta people came up with the strategies that could win on those levels, and if you did not do those strategies, you actually lost, and these required the preset amount of actions every day, and if you lost, that was a big deal. And anyway, it is a card-based game. You make your own deck, so it was in theory inspiring creativity, but you were cut off from creativity with this. And I actually didn't even notice. I spent so much time on this. I was in university when this happened, so I had entire days where I didn't even have to go to the facilities. By the program, I was elected to admin status. I didn't want that there at all. I knew what the admins did there, and I loved the admin system there. I loved what the guild I was part of did, the admins did there. And I knew I cannot do that. So I didn't want to be an admin. And I realized, and I asked, what the fuck happened? Who elevated me to admin? And people said, you were playing so much. The program itself gave you the admin status. I realized I got addicted. I spent too much time on this game. And I quit. I was very nervous about it, and it was like smoking a cigarette, and you try to reach for another cig for like 2 weeks. I literally have this when I have big stress. I smoke one cig, just ask someone for it, and I literally have to fight the addiction for 2 weeks. So, either way, MMOs, and something like World of Warcraft, It's just too expensive for me. It's absolutely. You have to buy the game and you have to pay a full game's price every month, like $60, just to be able to play the game you actually physically bought. That's a joke for me. So, so I'm not playing MMOs because either it's always way too expensive, and it eventually you will face something that limits your progress, especially if you don't have actually coordinated even, what's the chance even online friends, contacts can play with you for years at the same schedule? That's just not happening. And even if you had, sooner or later you will face the paywall, because these are always have a paywall built into them. And so I had my fun with MMOs and even had some success within them, but it's just not a thing I'm going back to. It's just not worth it.